My goodness, happy Friday. Welcome in on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. And yes, that's right. We are up here in Gladstone for Back the Blue Tour Stop number 2. We kicked off this 2 months ago. We were at Clay County at the Sheriff's Department. And now here we are back in the Northland. Happy to be here with our friends in Gladstone as we get a Friday morning set up. And, of course, you know, I keep thinking about the Folsom Prison Blues and thinking about Fulton County, where, of course, President Trump turned himself in a now infamous mugshot photo that will go down in history. So a lot going on here on a Friday morning, but let's just set the stage for what today is going to look like. Back the Blue Tour, we started, and really was an idea going back, a year ago now. And it was a way to support the men and women of law enforcement in our community because, sad to say, many in local media have no interest in doing that. So we wanted to go around the metro. We are going around the metro every few weeks and stopping at area police departments and law enforcement offices and telling some of the stories that are happening behind the scenes that oftentimes you don't know about. So the folks up here in Gladstone were willing to have us, and we're happy to have us. But, something happened this morning up here that has thrown a bit of a wrench into our plans. And obviously we're not first priority, nor should we be when you're dealing with a situation like this. But really this hits home on why we do this. So you heard John mention this morning that at about 3:20, so 2.5 hours ago, officers were called to 5700 North Main Street on a report of a car prowler. So the Gladstone Police Department and Clay County deputies responded. As officers tried to arrest suspects, one tried to flee. Gladstone police say an officer was dragged down the street by suspected vehicles and shots were fired. A suspect is in the hospital, but we also just got an update on that here in the last 7 minutes that says the suspect has died, and the officer ended up suffering minor injuries, thank goodness. But you had an officer that was dragged down the street by the suspect's vehicle, and that led to shots being fired. So it just is a reminder. I mean, the odds of that happening on the day that we're coming up here to Gladstone to do this show is, I don't want to say 1 in a million, but obviously the odds are not high. But it's a reminder, a constant reminder, that the men and women in law enforcement in this community and obviously in every community around this region and, around the country for that matter, go to work every day and they're chasing down the bad guys to keep us safe. I mean, to put it just simply, if I'm explaining that to my 4-year-old, they are dealing with individuals that the rest of society doesn't want anything to do with and should not want anything to do with. They deal with them for a living, and they're putting themselves at risk every single day. And the coincidence of being up here in Gladstone for our Back the Blue tour as Gladstone Police is dealing with an officer-involved shooting here in the last couple of hours is not lost on me. So there will be some changes to the program that we originally had lined up for the day, some guests that obviously are not going to be able to make it. But it is that constant reminder, whether it's officers dying in the line of duty, like Officer Oswald in Fairway in the last couple of weeks, or what's happening here in the last 2.5, 3 hours or so in Gladstone, that we should never take these individuals for granted. We should always appreciate what they're doing to keep us safe, and there's a lot going on in these police departments behind the scenes that we don't know anything about. And that's what we want to do here. That's what we want to accomplish, bring their stories to you, and put some faces and names to the people who are doing this great work behind the scenes that most people don't know. So we're happy to be up here. It will mean that there's going to be some changes, as I noted, to what's happening with the show today, but still we'll have a full program. We'll be here until 10 o'clock on KCMO Talk Radio. Now, of course, the biggest national story of the morning is what? The Donald Trump mugshot that is going to go down in history. I look at the mugshot, and I guess there was 2 ways that Trump could have gone with this thing. He could have gone with the thumbs-up smile, or he could have gone with the scowl. And I think he nailed it. Yeah, I think he nailed this scowl in this mugshot. And I got to imagine he was practicing this on the plane. He might have been practicing this thing for weeks, Mark. I don't know about you, but something tells me that that mugshot, that was not the first time he looked in the mirror and gave that kind of a look.
It gives me a little bit of a Zoolander vibe where he's doing the look at the camera last second, kind of, puffs the lips out a little bit.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. There's a little bit of Zoolander in there. I'll give you that. But it's a scowl that hits home in a way that really, I mean, however you feel about this guy, whatever you think of him, the fact that the most photographed man in the world needs a mugshot that then has to get leaked to the world is completely unnecessary. As if, gosh, we better get a photo of this guy because if not, no one's going to know who he is. Geez, we better have this one on file. I mean, it goes to show you that this is nothing but politics. Getting a mugshot of Donald Trump, for crying out loud? I mean, goodness gracious. Not only is the guy obviously a former president, but he's sitting here as the front runner for the nomination in 2024. Better get his mugshot. Oh, better show it to the media. And here's the thing, though. As much as this is a complete political screw job in so many ways, regardless of what you think of the man himself, you can think that he is an incredibly flawed and immoral man. You can have that opinion and still understand that what's going on here with this whole Georgia circus and the charges from Atlanta in Fulton County are a sham. Both those things can be true. You don't have to like him to admit what is going on here is all politics. And clearly now you've got a situation where Trump is using this to his advantage. I mean, this comes one day after the GOP debate on Wednesday night. And it wasn't a great debate. There was no outstanding moment. We talked a lot about that yesterday. But think about what this does now, right? For Donald Trump, this is now a way for him to remain the center of attention and to continue to lock down the Republican nomination. What it means for a general election, well, that remains to be seen. But in the meantime, when it comes to what's happening on the primary side, he has got all the energy. He has got everything focused on him. We are now 36 hours removed from the debate, and no one's going to be talking about the debate today. It is going to be all about Trump. It is going to be all about this mugshot. It is going to be all about Georgia. And by the way, he's taking advantage of that. Donald Trump did something last night that he has not done in nearly 3 years in the wake of this mugshot coming out. And we'll tell you what that is coming up and also get to you at 913-408-7710. Still a busy morning up here in Gladstone. We'll be taking your calls as well on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. And we're up in Gladstone this morning for tour stop number 2 of Back the Blue, as we started up in Clay County a few weeks back, and now we're back up here in the Northland in Gladstone, as we'll be having on guests throughout the morning. But as you may have heard in John Anthony's news at the top of the hour, there was an officer-involved shooting early this morning here in Gladstone, and that has left one suspect now dead. An officer has suffered minor injuries, so kind of up in the air on some of our planned guests for the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. But still, plenty of time to get you involved, talk about the news of the day, and we are thrilled that the good folks at Gladstone are having us up here. We're at City Hall, which is connected to the police department, but the police department right now is under construction, so we're operating right outside of City Hall, and it's a great facility they've got up here in Gladstone. We're happy to be here on a Friday morning on KCMO. Now, that being said, Donald Trump obviously stealing the show yesterday. He had until today to turn himself in to Fulton County after the charges came down following the 2020 election last week. And the reason I believe he did it yesterday was to make sure that there was no energy in the media to talk about the debate on Wednesday night. I mean, Donald Trump could have waited till today to turn himself in, but Donald Trump is a very smart and savvy media figure. Remember, this guy, was a media superstar long before he was ever a politician. And Donald Trump knows a couple of things. One, if you want to maximize a news cycle, you never do something on a Friday, especially when you're talking about a summer Friday. So he decided, all right, I've got until Friday the 25th today to turn myself in to Fulton County. Well, I'll do it on Thursday, the day after the debate. That way, if anybody has some outstanding night, I will suck all the energy out of the room, and I will steal the headlines, and I will make it once again about me being a victim. So that's what his timing was all about yesterday. A couple of reasons there. The timing worked for him when it came to avoiding a summer Friday news dump, and then also being able to capitalize on the post-debate news cycle and taking it away from anybody on that debate stage. Not that anybody was worthy of a 2-day news cycle on that debate stage, but, he was basically hedging his bets on this thing. So last night, Trump, after this mugshot comes out, he goes to Twitter, or I should say X, formerly known as Twitter, for the first time. Donald Trump put up his first tweet or his first X or whatever you want to call it since January 8th of 2021. The last time Donald Trump tweeted something out on January 8th, he posted, "To all those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. And I was looking at that post and I was thinking to myself, gosh, I don't know if that feels like it was just yesterday or a decade ago. I think I lean towards the latter. It feels like it was a decade ago at this point. But Donald Trump's last tweet, January 8th of 2021. And then yesterday, in a tweet that's been viewed 106 million times, Donald Trump posted simply a link to donaldjtrump.com and then a picture of his mugshot that says mugshot, August 24th, 2023. A picture of him. And then it says election interference, never surrender, donaldjtrump.com. That's it. That's the simple statement from Donald Trump, and it links to his website, which has a personal note on it. It says here, the American people know what's going on. What has taken place is a travesty of justice and election interference. The left wants to intimidate you out of voting for a political outsider who puts the American people first. But today I walked into the lion's den with one simple message on behalf of our entire movement. I will never surrender our mission to save America. It says here, if you are doing poorly due to the sinister people in control of our country right now, don't even think about donating. But if you can, make a contribution to evict crooked Joe Biden from the White House and save America during this dark chapter in our nation's history. Thank you, and God bless you. And then it says, Donald Trump. And you can donate $24, $47, $100, $250, $500, $1,000, or $3,300. Those are the options. But he does put the caveat in there. If you are doing poorly due to the sinister people in control of our country right now, don't even think about donating. You got to give him credit for that, right? I mean, he's basically saying this is not only going to theoretically help the campaign, but let's be honest. Some of this money is going to be used for his legal troubles, as has been the case now for the last several months. And that, to me, as much as anything, when people say, well, what do you mean this is political? I mean, this guy, come on, Pete. I mean, this maybe there's some politics here, but, if you're someone of the other side, you might say he clearly broke the law. Now, the best case against Donald Trump has, of course, been the Mar-a-Lago documents. We've known that for a very long time. But what this also accomplishes is every dollar that Trump is spending on his legal issues, he cannot spend on actually running a campaign. There is no coordination for his campaign to get out what needs to be done. Volunteers on the ground, right? Putting together grassroots efforts in key states. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, places like that. Those things that smart campaigns and good campaigns have to do, every dollar that Donald Trump is spending on legal issues is money that he cannot spend or is not able to spend on things like what's happening. The fact that he's leading the Republican primary, the fact that he's in first place, he's likely to be the nominee, but he's not going to have the money for the infrastructure to do what needs to be done to win what is very likely to be another very close election. Right? And that's the other thing. If it's Trump and Biden, we're looking at another razor-thin election, I believe. Both guys are unpopular. People are going to go into that voting booth. They're going to pinch their nose. They're going to vote for what they perceive to be the lesser of two evils. And we're going to be talking about 150, 160 million votes, and it's probably going to be decided in 4 states by a few thousand votes either way. Tens of thousands of votes either way. That's what we're looking at here.
Yep. I see it. He can buy my vote, as a matter of fact. I'm the fastest way through my stomach, right, Mark?
We have pizzas, we have 300 hamburgers, many French fries.
I'll be willing.
You are a simple man to please,
I'll
John.
get out there and knock on doors for some pizzas and many French fries.
Well, that is the way to John Anthony's heart. Just so you know there, Trumpster, all you got to do is buy John a cheeseburger, and he'll go door to door for 3 days. He'll barely take a water break. Unbelievable. 913-408-7710. We'll welcome you in as we are live in Gladstone for our Back the Blue tour. We'll also have a poll for you on who exactly people thought won the debate Wednesday night. That's next. What a morning. You can't predict how this goes sometimes, but we are here in Gladstone, and we are following and giving you updates throughout the morning, and you're hearing them from John Anthony as well on the news. Officer-involved shooting up here in Gladstone as we take the Back the Blue tour back to the Northland. The suspect in this officer-involved shooting has died as of the most recent update here in the last half hour or so. And this goes back to 3:20 this morning. Officers were called to 5700 North Main Street on a report of a car prowler, 3:20 a.m. Gladstone police say an officer was dragged down the street by the suspect's vehicle. Shots were fired, and that suspect was taken to the hospital and did die as of 6 a.m. this morning. The officer was treated with minor injuries. So some of our guests are up in the air right now here on KCMO Talk Radio, but still great to be sharing the stories with you as we roll through a busy Friday morning. Now, the debate from Wednesday night, we talked a lot about that yesterday, right? And we had anecdotal calls from you on who won and who had a good night and who had a bad night. And obviously I had my opinions on how the night went. But this is interesting. This is an official poll. Now take that with a grain of salt. Kind of an oxymoron to say an official poll. But a poll that was done by 538. They're a top polling firm. Once again, relatively speaking, top polling firms still aren't very accurate. However, a poll conducted by 538 says 29% of Republican voters said that Ron DeSantis performed the best out of the 8 candidates on stage in Milwaukee. This poll was done yesterday, 775 potential Republican primary voters who watched the debate. The second best on the debate stage, Vivek Ramaswamy, who had 26% of GOP voters in the poll. And then after that, the only other person in double digits, Nikki Haley, with 15% of GOP voters saying that she had the best night. After that, fake tough guy Mike Pence comes in at 7% support, followed by Tim Scott and Chris Christie, who had 4%. And then North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum and former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson got 1%. So they must have somehow found Doug Burgum and Asa Hutchinson's respective wives and polled them. Because how there's 1% of people who think that those two guys won the debate, they were wallflowers the entire night. I can't think of one thing either guy said. Like, even the word "the" doesn't come to mind. I can't picture anything either of those two guys said. How you could possibly take a call from a pollster and be like, oh, yeah, Asa Hutchinson, that guy won the night. What? did you even watch it? Did you listen to it? Do you even know what happened? Oh, my goodness. That's when I shake my head at some of these polls.
Razorback fans.
Yeah. Maybe that's it. Nothing else makes sense. Oh, my goodness. But DeSantis coming in the top spot is interesting because we talked a lot yesterday about how he wasn't great by any stretch. He was awfully programmed. He was predictable. And he didn't come off as incredibly likable. He kind of had that snarl going all night where he was trying to remember his lines and also look like the tough guy. And I didn't think he hurt himself, but he didn't bring any warmth to the equation or the conversation. And that's what people have been waiting for to some degree from Ron DeSantis, that charm. And whether you love Trump or you can't stand Trump, Trump does have an element of that charm to him. Now, he drives you nuts with a lot of other things, but he does have charm in terms of his wittiness, in terms of his ability to work a room, dancing to the YMCA on stage at rallies. Like, those are things, John, that I don't think we appreciate enough about Trump and what he brings to the conversation, just talking about the politics and the way the game is played.
I agree with you, but you're not doing the word charm any favors here. He has a charisma. How about that?
Fine. Yeah. Okay. You want to use that? I'll give you that word.
Charming is a little sweeter in my guesstimation. So, I'd say a little more vinegar in there. So charisma.
Okay. Yes, that's probably the better word.
Effect on people.
He does, and his lesser qualities of his personality sometimes overshadow the charisma or the charm, however you want to frame it, that he does have. Like, everyone I know who has met Trump personally has said that this guy in a one-on-one setting is outstanding. Like, it doesn't matter if you like him or not. In a one-on-one setting, he is very good, and he's charismatic, and he's charming, and he's all of those things. And he shows you a little bit of that in public when he's doing rallies and on debate stages and things like that. And the thing is, he's as good at that as anybody since Reagan, arguably better than him in large part. So all these guys are coming in and they're trying to take him down, and it's just, it's very difficult to do when you've got the 800-pound gorilla sitting there in the room. I mean, not physically in the room on Wednesday night, but obviously in the race. And you can't out-Trump Trump. You just can't do it. So from Ron DeSantis' perspective, the fact that you do have, 29%, a plurality of Republican voters in this poll done by 538 who suggest he won it, that's a good thing. But once again, the bar is pretty low. The bar is just maintain that number 2 slot, keep trucking along, and try to find yourself in a position that if Trump does collapse, DeSantis is there to catch as many voters as he possibly can. I mean, that's it. Vivek Ramaswamy, as we noted, used car salesman approach, but is appealing to a portion of the electorate, and I get it. But for a guy who spends most of his time praising Donald Trump, it's like, dude, why are you running then? Because you're running against the guy that you think is just the greatest thing, who also happens to be in the race, so it makes absolutely no sense to me.
See what you're saying? Yep.
Yeah, so that's where this latest poll was here, and it was the first poll that we've seen that was something beyond just, the anecdotal polls we do here every day on KCMO Talk Radio, John.
So Mike Pence and his Mr. Hand, the teacher in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Ray Walsh. Yeah, he comes in at what, 7%?
7%.
Not playing well.
No.
Not my favorite.
Mike Pence's shtick from Wednesday night was not received well.
I would have thought Tim Scott might have got 8.
Yeah.
Right, he's tied with him.
Tim Scott was down at 4%.
Oh, 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in Chris Christie territory.
Yeah.
And I like Tim Scott, but I got to imagine he's got to be done here in the next month. There's no lane for Tim Scott. Seems like a very nice man, but there is no lane for Tim Scott in this thing right now. And Wednesday night, to me, was the nail in the coffin, final nail in the coffin for him on his campaign, and Mike Pence too. But Mike Pence probably going to hang around till Iowa because, well, why not? I guess. I mean, that's the only state he might be able to gain some traction in with evangelicals. But there is not much of a point of Mike Pence hanging around this thing. And clearly nobody liked his tough guy routine on Wednesday night. It was beyond annoying. I mean, just beyond. I never thought that Mike Pence could come off that unlikable, but amazingly he did. Incredible to say. 913-408-7710. Let's slide in Chris in Kansas City. Chris, you're on KCMO.
Hey, Pete. So I don't agree with your comment on Vivek. I mean, you're the smartest guy on radio, no doubt. But don't you think he's playing the long game here? In the back, I mean, he's a smart guy, right? He built a $1 billion company.
Mm-hmm.
His parents are smart. Don't you think he's looking to, I could probably come in here, whether Trump or DeSantis gets in, and I could probably get, slotted as VP, and, in 4 to 8 years, likely 8 years, I can really run for president.
Yeah, I think Chris, I think you're right. I believe that this guy is playing a long game and looking at his future in politics and laying the foundation for, he's only 38, so he can be around for a long time. I just don't know who the guy is. I mean, he writes things in his books that are different than what he's saying now. He's done things in his past. In 2020, he was donating to Act Blue, which is the biggest arm of the Democratic Party. So I don't know who he is. And I think that's the biggest concern I have with that guy. Is he just a charlatan, or is he genuinely somebody that the party and the people and the voters should be looking at?
Well, he's opportunistic. I mean, my wife, who's arguably more to the right than I am, can't stand him. And the only thing that, Chris Christie said that I think where he was spot on is that, he said the exact same thing Barack Obama did, back in the primaries, where I'm a guy with looks funny with a funny name. And yeah, I think it could be a charlatan. But again, I don't think his run here is right now. It's later. And one other point on DeSantis. The best thing he could be doing right now is show a little bit more favoritism towards Trump, because DeSantis clearly has a track record. I mean, what he did in Florida was the best run state during COVID. And
yes.
So, I think that he really needs to not walk the line, but go over the line and really, almost mimic Vivek, unfortunately, in his support for Trump. But thanks for taking the call.
Yeah, Chris, great call. I think here's the thing. DeSantis has tried to figure out how to perfectly walk the line between every faction of the GOP. Everyone thinks it's just MAGA and never Trump, and that's not true. There's never Trump, there's MAGA, and then there's probably one or two buckets in between MAGA and never Trump. There's kind of traditional GOP. There's kind of traditional conservatives who like Trump but wonder if his time is come and gone. I mean, there's probably 3 to 4 factions in there, and DeSantis is trying to get as many of each faction as he can, but it's not really working for him. I just think he's being too cautious in everything he's doing. I think his handlers keep thinking Trump is going to blow himself up, but we know how that worked or didn't work in 2016. Everyone else thought that was going to happen too, and it didn't happen. So at some point, you got to get a little more aggressive, and maybe that's part of the answer there, Chris. Good call. 913-408-7710. Locally, one of our county chairmen put a piece in the Kansas City Star yesterday. Big fan of green energy. Big fan of government spending on green energy. We'll tell you who that is and what he wrote coming up next. Well, we're up here monitoring what is a busy morning in Gladstone, not what any of us expected, but there was an officer-involved shooting early this morning, so our schedule with some of our planned guests here in Gladstone up in the air right now, but still plenty of time for you. Talk issues and news stories of the day here on KCMO Talk Radio. Happy Friday. And happy final day of this ridiculous heat wave we've been dealing with across the region over the last, it's been a week. It was last Saturday, right? We topped 100, and I don't think we've gotten under 100 for a high ever since. So today is, for many of you in the region, the first day of Friday Night Lights, the first day of high school football. Well, we do know that there are some games that are shifting their football games from a 7 p.m. start to an 8 or 8:30 p.m. start. Lee Summit sent out a message yesterday to families saying that due to the extreme heat, they are moving their varsity home games to 8:30, with the field being accessed at 7 p.m. for warm-ups. They say that they'll continue to monitor the weather on Friday to ensure that conditions are safe for gameplay and are in alignment with Missouri High School Sports Association's weather guidelines. Belton School District, this from KCTV5, was first to announce changes to Friday football games. The district announced Wednesday afternoon that Belton's game at Excelsior Springs tonight is delayed. It's now scheduled for an 8 p.m. kickoff because of the temperatures. Let's see. Park Hill announced the football game is going to kick off an hour later. Raytown hosting Smithville. They also are pushing back to 8 o'clock. North KC pushing to 8 o'clock. And Ray Peck at Rockhurst also 8 o'clock tonight. So they haven't done this across the entire Missouri side, but that is the way things are trending as of right now.
Yeah, there were 17 games there on the list.
17?
That I saw earlier. Yeah, total.
Okay.
Or
all right.
that I had seen, and I don't know that was all inclusive. So
well,
luckily districts are texting people nowadays.
Well, I'm sure there's reasons they're not doing this, but I would try to just move these games to tomorrow. I know that gives you a short week for the players and the coaches, and these guys are all about routines.
Yeah, a lot of times the junior varsity games Saturday morning with some of these schools.
Okay,
yeah.
But I would.
I understand what you're saying.
Gosh, I would move these games to tomorrow night. I mean, it's going to be 72 degrees tomorrow night. It's going to be 30% cooler tomorrow night. 30 degrees cooler, excuse me. Also 30% because it's going to be 100 degrees today. But it's going to be 30 degrees cooler tomorrow night than kickoff tonight when, it's still going to be 96 degrees at 7 p.m. Here in Gladstone where I'm at this morning. I know that it'll throw off schedules for officials and players and coaches and families, but I'm sorry. I am not looking to put kids out there in 100-degree heat with heat indexes of 115 tonight. I just, it's a terrible idea for so many reasons.
Seem to be putting a lot of stock in it actually arriving on time, That's kind of funny, about 9 o'clock tonight, so it should be around halftime.
The cold front's going to come?
We'll see.
I mean, my phone here is still saying 88 degrees at 9 p.m. tonight in Gladstone. That's not the kind of weather I want to put 16, 17-year-old kids in with football pads and helmets on their heads. I'm just surprised that we're in a world where, 2 years ago we were arguing about whether or not 8-year-olds should be wearing masks, right? And now here we are, and no one's thinking twice about putting 16-year-olds with pads and helmets on a football field in 100-degree weather. It's like, what am I missing here? The mask thing was beyond stupid in hindsight. We knew that at the time, but some people still argued about it. Now it's like, we're going to push the kickoff back an hour. We should be fine. It'll only be 112 heat index instead of 118. You're not accomplishing much here, John.
Suggesting there's a teeter-totter here, metaphorically?
Yes. I think this is I think everyone's making a mistake. Anyone who's playing football tonight is making a mistake, especially when you can push it back. Heck, and I know some people aren't going to like this, push it back to a noon kick tomorrow. Do a Saturday noon game. Yeah, I know there's something else.
Arrowhead, yeah.
But it's a preseason football game, for crying out loud.
No such thing in my house.
Come on. I mean,
no, I'm with you. There's a lot of moving parts here, though.
I know. But I can't fathom if you wait 15, 16 hours, you get these kids in 80-degree temperatures versus having them at 100 degrees tonight for kickoff. It's a huge mistake.
I got it for you.
Okay.
Pete Mundo's lightning strike machine. All you have to do is drive a couple of ways from the school, fire that thing up. Oh, lightning, cancel the game. Right?
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever I can do to help.
Right.
I'll just stay up here in Gladstone for the day. I'll wait till kickoff tonight and start driving the lightning machine around. Did you get a sponsor for the lightning machine, by the way, John?
Yeah, maybe so. We'll check into that.
Oh, gosh. Now, Mark, your girls have been, or your oldest especially, has been going to, various soccer practices all week. And I know last weekend, Mark was telling me that they were putting kids on the field on Saturday, Sunday afternoon when it was like, a heat index of 120 and kids were passing out.
Yeah, we had games, luckily, Saturday and Sunday morning last week, but Saturday afternoon they had games when they probably shouldn't have, and then they ended up canceling the ones on Sunday. So all week this week, practices have been canceled, and their game tonight was already canceled that they were supposed to play at 5:30.
So 5:30 is the hottest time of the day here. All right, and then Mark was telling me something about wet bulbs.
Wet bulb globe temperature. I've never heard that before this week.
That sounds like some kind of kinky thing. I don't know.
I was going to say, back in my day, I can tell you what wet bulb. But anyway,
I'm sitting here. Mark's talking to me offline about wet bulbs, and I'm like, "What's going on in your house, Mark?" And then he's like, "No. It's like what is it? Some heat index
it's an algebra
measurement
problem for weather."
Yeah. It's a little complex, but it takes the air temperature, humidity, sun angle, wind speed to determine how easily a human body can cool itself. And if the temperature is over 90 degrees on the wet bulb globe temperature, then you're not supposed to do activity outside. So
I assume we were at a wet bulb of over 90 all week.
All week, yeah. And last weekend it was up to 100 in a lot of areas around here.
Jeez.
It's wet bulb globe, PSN, by the way. So WBG, I guess. Huh? What's the WBG? Wet bulb globe.
Wet bulb globe. All right, so it's an accurate measurement of the heat stress on a person's body. But hold on, how do you even if you got someone who's 100 pounds overweight, the heat stress on their body is going to be more than somebody who isn't 100 pounds overweight?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so this is just done for what, the average person, I guess?
I guess so.
All right, well,
there's probably a periodical table of elements involved here. So you can look up your weight and your height and see what your wet bulb globe factor is.
Oh, gosh. All right. Things I won't be doing this weekend is looking up my wet bulb globe. I mean, imagine going home and saying that to your significant other. What are you doing this weekend? I'm going to check out the wet bulb globe. What the hell's going on here? Okay. Well, either way, I would not be playing football games tonight. I would be moving it to a noon kickoff tomorrow. Play at night. I know the Chiefs are on. It's a preseason game against the Browns. Is Mahomes even playing tomorrow? I mean, usually the starters don't even play.
They might.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Last year they put him on for the first. They did the choir huddle in honor of Len Dawson, and then he went right off and didn't play in the third game. So they could do that.
Well, it used to be when there were 4 preseason games, the starters would play the second and the third and then would sit out for the fourth. But now that there's only 3, I guess they got to get a few more reps here in the third and final preseason game. So, whatever. He may play tomorrow, but come on.
I mean, you may see some starters, maybe not Patrick, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, either way, it's another scorcher of a Friday here in the Kansas City area. Appreciate you joining us on KCMO Talk Radio, 913-408-7710. That's also our text line here on KCMO. Pete, 18-year-olds wear full combat gear in 115-degree weather and have to complete the mission. I understand that, but we're talking about high school football kids, not military guys in Afghanistan. I mean, I understand that people can do it, but here's the other thing. Military guys train for that a little more than high school football players do, right? Like, I would wonder, and I'm curious, have the high school football players on the Missouri side of the state line, have they been practicing outside this week? If not, and I imagine the coaches have taken it easy in some respects, then they're in for an ultra rude awakening tonight if they're going to be on the field.
I think they've only been out there in the mornings.
Okay, so yeah, their bodies aren't even adjusted for this kind of a heat in pads tonight. I mean, it's dangerous. Sheesh. And like I saw yesterday, Mike Gundy, the Oklahoma State football coach, if you've got that kind of a turf field where it's got the rubber in it, the tire turf,
belts, yeah.
Those fields are hotter than just grass fields. And apparently, he was saying that Oklahoma State, which has that tire turf, that field gets up to 160 degrees on-field temperature.
Yeah. This is sitting on concrete.
When it's just sitting there, in the dead of summer. So that's dangerous stuff, and there's a lot of fields around here that have that. Well, Donald Trump found himself yesterday at the Fulton County Jail as he got his mugshot taken because obviously the most photographed man in the world, who also happens to be a former president and a front-runner once again to be the GOP nominee, needs his mugshot taken because, gosh, if he ran away, nobody would ever find him. Obviously, tongue-in-cheek. And that mugshot gets dropped last night from Fulton County Jail. And, by now, I had a friend text me last night, and this is a friend who can't stand Donald Trump. But he sent me a text, and the text just read as follows. This is all it said. He didn't even say Trump's name because I knew who he was talking about. He just texted me, and he goes, I can't stand this guy, but this is such a screw job. That's all his text read. He didn't have to say Trump's name. I knew who he was talking about. And I got to imagine, I know there's some of you in the audience who, have been waiting for the mugshot, right? CNN has been promising you a Trump mugshot dating back to Russiagate. Does it feel as good as you thought it would feel? Like, I'm just wondering at 913-408-7710 if it feels as good as you thought it would. Because oftentimes these things don't, right? Now, I know some of you are going to go blow a paycheck on Trump mugshot merchandise. Some of you are going to go out, you got to get the T-shirt, you got to get the hat. I'm sure you're going to have many people trying to make a buck off of Trump mugshot merch. But does it feel as good as you thought it would? Or does the part of you that knows that this is a political screw job make it not as enticing as you otherwise thought it would have been? I'm genuinely curious. You can just text that in at 913-408-7710. That being said, Trump has been fundraising off this since last night, as you expected him to do. He posted his first tweets, or X, or whatever it's being called, for the first time since January 8th of 2021. Trump on Twitter tweeting out a link to DonaldJTrump.com, where he's got a fundraiser going on right now after last night's mugshot that got dropped out of the Fulton County, Georgia jail. But one of the more interesting parts, and I got a kick out of this, was what Donald Trump listed his height and weight at. So on the former president's booking sheet, Trump is listed as 6'3", okay, 215 pounds. Now, to put this into perspective, I went on the Chiefs roster website, and I said, all right, let me see some of the guys who are, around Trump's size. Well,
Valdez Scanlon?
Well, Mahomes is pretty close.
Okay.
Mahomes is listed at 6'2", 225.
Yeah, it's that 215 I was concerned about on the Chiefs roster even.
Yeah, well,
We're going Justin Ross, maybe?
Let's just put it this way. Trump's getting royally screwed on this is clearly political prosecution. Even if you can't stand the guy, this is clearly political prosecution. But I can tell you right now, Trump ain't checking in at 215.
Fake news.
They got Isaiah Pacheco at 5'10", 216.
Yeah,
Pacheco they got at 216.
I don't think we can even do the Price is Right game where we mix up the digits here because I don't think he's 251 even.
I don't think he is either here. They got Justin Watson, tight end, wide receiver. I don't know what he's technically.
He's wide receiver. Yeah.
Wide receiver, 6'2", 215. He's basically Trump. I'm pretty confident if I put those two guys next to each other, one of them ain't 215. And I don't know who it is. Justin Ross is 6'4", 210.
Yep.
the wide receiver.
Scanlon, what's he, 6'4"? About the same as Ross.
He's 6'4", 206. He's a rail, man.
Yeah, yep.
He's a rail at 6'4", 206. But I saw that, and I'm like, holy cow, that's a stretch. All right, Mike's in Kansas City. What's up, Mike? Good morning.
Yeah, if Trump's ego would allow it, he should have a collage of him, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, other civil rights or political activists, Lech Walesa, and basically saying, how come is it that the establishment always tries to put down somebody who's helping the little guy?
Oh, so are you suggesting that in a T-shirt, or what are you suggesting?
I don't know how you would market it, but I mean, it would be great. I would love to see Trump and Martin Luther King and Gandhi and maybe even Lech Walesa all in the same picture, all with mugshots, all with the numbers, everything, and show what the establishment does to somebody that tries to help the little guy.
Thank you, Mike. I did see some people last night sharing Martin Luther King's mugshot from Birmingham, Alabama. And it said the last time corrupt Southern politicians took a mugshot of their political opponent, and it's the MLK mugshot. I mean, it's a stretch, but is it really? Welcome in. Happy Friday, end of the week. It's felt like 2 weeks with this heat, but we are thrilled to be wrapping up the week here in Gladstone, where we're at for our Back the Blue tour stop number 2, visiting the Gladstone Police Department. But it's been an unpredictable morning thus far, because the lead story, you go to any of the TV news websites, there was an officer-involved shooting this morning in Gladstone. Officers said a call came in at 3:20 this morning on reports of car prowling. That's basically, breaking into the cars at the Englewood apartment complex, 57th and Main in Gladstone. We're here. What are we off of, Chris? Chris is our engineer on site. What are we off of? Holmes here? Yeah, we're right off of Holmes and 67th? Yeah, 67th. So that's where we're at this morning here in Gladstone. So this is right down the street. And police said a number of cars in the complex had been broken into when the officers arrived. It was at that time that a police officer tried to arrest 3 suspects. One of them attempted to drive off. While trying to detain the suspect, driving away, the officer was dragged through the parking lot. According to the police, the suspect driving the vehicle was shot by the officer and pronounced dead after being taken to a nearby hospital. So it's really been unbelievable because, as we talked to the chief about last hour, this is the first officer-involved shooting in Gladstone in several years. And here we are. What are the odds? We've got our Back the Blue tour. We're coming up here to Gladstone this morning, and they have an officer-involved shooting, 3 hours, not even, 2.5 hours before the show's set to begin. And the whole purpose of this Back the Blue tour that we've been doing, that we started here, was to highlight the men and women in law enforcement in our region who don't get the attention and certainly never the positive publicity that they deserve. Right? We know what the media, and sad to say many in local media, do with cops. They talk about them when they can drag them through the mud. They talk about them when they can rip the entire workforce. They do it when they can portray cops to be nothing but bad people and racists and gun-triggered, happy individuals who just want to, go out and harm people on a given day. That's what they get off to, local media, writing those stories. But law enforcement is more complex than it's ever been because of technology, because of media and social media and, the rise in crime the last couple of years in the wake of 2020 and COVID and George Floyd and all that stuff. And they're all short-staffed. Last hour we had on the chief, and they're a department of about 49, 50 people, and they're down 4 or 5 cops, he said. So, being down 4 or 5 cops, he was happy about that, but that's still, based on a percentage, a larger number than you might realize at first glance. So we figured this tour would be a great way to highlight the men and women in law enforcement in our region, and we're thrilled to be here in Gladstone. But, of course, the realities of the job came into full display this morning when I got a text at 4 o'clock saying, hey, we got to shift some things around because there was an officer-involved shooting. So it's the realities of what these men and women do every day, what they deal with every day, and we're having a great morning here. We've talked to the chief. We're hoping to have him back on again in the 9 o'clock hour, and we'll be talking to other folks as well throughout the morning here on KCMO Talk Radio. Bottom of the hour, Rob Sanderson is going to be joining us, and he's very involved with the 911 centers and, gosh, the dispatchers and whatnot. He just stopped by in the dispatchers' office is where he was going next, and obviously it's been a busy morning for that dispatcher room in the wake of what has happened. But you've got all area law enforcement here in Gladstone this morning. You've got the Kansas City FBI involved as well because apparently a couple of suspects are still at large. So we're monitoring all of it, and we'll keep you posted on that here on KCMO Talk Radio, 710 AM and 103.7 FM. Also, always stream us on the all-new KCMO Talk Radio app. Meantime, Trump and the mugshot is obviously getting an enormous amount of attention. And by the way, it's a earplugs, kids. It's a badass mugshot. All right? I mean, I don't care what you think. Trump practiced that mugshot pose for a long time. Some thought that he might go with the thumbs up smile. I'm glad he didn't. I mean, Trump in that mugshot, man, he is looking into your soul. Zoom in on that mugshot. Trump is looking right into your soul in that mugshot. And the angle is very good for him. It makes his face look thin. He looks younger in that mugshot than he does in other situations. Practice does make perfect. They say it doesn't, but I'm guessing that he practiced that one for a long time, and it looks damn good. So you got to give him that much.
It'll look good in the Hall of Presidents there at Disney World, wouldn't it? So you walk by and the eyes follow you. Right? It's like Scooby-Doo mystery.
Well, I've already seen the memes. They put the mugshot into Mount Rushmore, which is pretty funny. Could you imagine the meltdown if they took that mugshot and put it right into Mount Rushmore? Like putting it, let's see, where do we want to put it? Maybe to the left of Jefferson. Probably better than to the right of Lincoln on Mount Rushmore. Probably makes more sense. But imagine chiseling the mugshot right into Mount Rushmore. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that would be something. So that's obviously the biggest story of the day. Trump's fundraising off of that, and it's only going to help him in the Republican primary. Meantime, I saw this because there's still fallout from the debate on Wednesday night, the Republican debate, first one of the primary process. And a new poll shows that DeSantis won the debate according to Republican voters. Now, not by a wide margin. It had DeSantis at 29%. This was done by 538 polling. Vivek Ramaswamy at 26, Nikki Haley at 15. Everybody else was under 10. I thought DeSantis had a good night because he didn't have a bad night. And by his standards, that was fine. I thought Nikki Haley surprised me with a good night. Vivek has a little bit of that used car salesman approach to him, so that turns me off at times. But I saw this from Matt Walsh, who is on this radio station at 4 o'clock every day. And Matt Walsh put this up on Twitter yesterday, and I want to share it with you. He writes here, DeSantis obviously has advisors telling him to adopt a personality that is not natural for him. The awkward fake smiling is part of that. He needs to fire those idiots, whoever they are, and just be himself. Matt Walsh writes here, he should have opened the debate last night by saying this. Hi, I'm Ron DeSantis. If you're looking for Mr. Personality or the homecoming king, I'm not your guy. If you want someone who makes interesting small talk, I'm not your guy. If you want a drinking buddy, then you're probably better off with one of these other candidates. But if you want a killer who simply gets the job done and cares about the boring stuff like policy and governance, I'm your guy. That is from Matt Walsh, who is a Daily Wire host who you hear at 4 o'clock every day on KCMO. And a lot of people who work in politics for a living responded to Matt Walsh, and they're like, you can't do that. You don't know what you're doing. You've never won elections. That's bad advice. Well, I find it interesting that I know there's a lot of people who do this for a living, and they're the experts. I get it. You're the experts. I just sit here with a microphone and talk about stuff. You're the experts. But, all these people said Trump was doing it the wrong way, too. And look how that's worked out the last 8 years. Is it really bad advice for him to be authentic? And I know every consultant will say, no, you want to be the guy people want to have a beer with. I think that was true a generation ago. I don't know about you. I'd be curious at 913-408-7710. I don't care about having a beer with my president. Do you? I don't care about having a beer with my U.S. senator. Because one, it's never going to happen. Two, that's what my friends and family are for. We are at a point in the country where maybe 25 years ago, when the parties were more or less the same, just kind of slightly different around the edges, this party wants a 39% top tax rate. This party wants a 35% top tax rate. We're at a point where one political party thinks that if you have a penis, you can be a woman. Like, I don't care anymore about having a beer with my president. I want somebody who can win and who can get the job done. And if the consulting class is at the point where they're like, well, you gotta be likable. People want to have a beer with you. The country's not there right now. The country's as divided as it's ever been. And the sales pitch of maybe I'm not Mr. Friendly, I'm going to try to be a little better on that front, but I am a stone-cold political killer. Political killer, listen closely. Look at what I've accomplished as the governor of Florida. That seems to be a much better approach. So I like Matt Walsh's idea. But the consulting class was in his mentions yesterday, being like, oh, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. You've got to be likable. People want to sit down and have a beer with you and do small talk. And it's like, but do they really? In this environment, in this climate, right now, in this country? You tell me. 913-408-7710. As we at 8:15, we are live in Gladstone on a busy Friday morning for Back the Blue Tour Stop number 2 on KCMO. Well, it's been a great morning here in Gladstone. Unfortunately, the news is not what anybody wants, but it is what it is. They've got an officer-involved shooting this morning in Gladstone. We're here for the Back the Blue Tour Stop number 2. Fred Farris, the chief, is back with us. We had you on 2.5 hours ago, Chief. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Pete. Thanks.
So take us through. You've been out at this officer-involved shooting, I imagine, on and off for the last couple of hours. Any updates that you can give us on what's going on out there?
Yeah, we've amassed the Northland officer-involved shooting team because of the scope of the investigation. We were fortunate that our partners at Kansas City and some of the federal agencies, ATF, FBI, reached out, and they provided some great resources. So we've got an incredible group of investigators, local, state, federal, that are all up there right now trying to help us sort through the details of this. We do believe we still have 2 outstanding suspects, and all the attempts are being made right now to try to track those guys down.
Do we know where the suspects came from?
No, I don't have any of the details on that right now.
All right. So we're kind of in an investigative mode, but we do know, how is the officer? Do you know the officer's doing?
He's doing well. We've sent him home. He had some minor bangs and bruises, but he's doing fine. And we'll be checking on him quite a bit over the next few days. And the other officers from that shift are all doing well as well.
Good. What about the the mental health side of this? We talked about a little bit this morning how things have changed. What does it look like now when someone's involved in something like this? What's the protocol now and what you guys do and how that's changed through your decades of law enforcement?
So we're pretty fortunate to be in a metro area like this where there's a lot of collaboration. There's peer support groups across the first responder network. So peer support are going to be very organized meetings with those involved. A lot of times there'll be a mental health clinician in there as well, and it's more of kind of an after-action debrief to get them talking about the incident, because what we've learned over the years is you can't just bury that stuff. You've got to talk about it and get it out, and that's what starts that healing process. So for us, that'll be a big part of what happens with these officers the next few days. We want to make sure they get at least a couple of full sleep cycles of rest in before we do any any interviews with the officers. They've done a very basic walkthrough at the scene. But after they've had a couple of sleep cycles in, that's when they'll get in and answer some questions for the investigators and help to fill in some of those blanks that they might still have. As far as that mental health component, our job now is just to make sure that we're getting them the care they need and that we've got the right staff on site and through these meetings to take care of that.
Seeing this as you have throughout your whole career, I mean, are there signs that you look for just as a chief, as a colleague, of when people are doing well coming out of something like this versus when they might be struggling?
Yeah, you can see it. I mean, it's very visible when you start seeing big swings in behavior. People might snap off the hand, snap off a little quicker than they normally would, or they may start looking a little bit more tired, or there are things that we're going to look for, and there's things that we're going to make them aware of too. Things that are going to be healthy for you and not healthy for you. Stay off the energy drinks, keep exercising if that's part of your routine. Make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. Stay off social media. Don't go to those things that are going to probably get you angry just by reading comments. So. We kind of take a proactive approach, but we're also going to be reactive if we see things that are out of the ordinary for those officers.
Don't watch or listen to the news. Maybe that goes on
only the Pete Mundo show.
Okay, all right. That's fine. That's fine by me. We'll take it. Now, the mental health side, Fred Ferris, the Gladstone police chief, is joining us. What about working with individuals in the community who have mental health issues? Because I know that can be a large part of the people who end up needing your services. How have you guys tried to create a more efficient process to helping those people so you're not just getting the same people who are calling you every other week?
Sure, and that's been a growing problem in society for the last decade. It's just the numbers just grow exponentially, and it's not just us. I mean, it affects us. It affects fire and EMS. It affects our emergency rooms, where that seems to be the stopping point for a lot of these. So we were very fortunate about a year ago to partner with Tri-County Mental Health. We approached them about their interest in putting a mental health clinician embedded with us one day a week. They're there to go through our reports and to try to deal with the people that we're dealing with that are in crisis. So, for example, we may have a repeat caller that's calling 2 or 3 times a day or 4 or 5 times a week, and we find out, well, they're not in any kind of mental health system, or they're not in any kind of alcohol rehab or anything like that. And this clinician and our trained officers are then reaching out to those individuals and helping to make those connections with those resources, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, here's phone numbers, here's family members we can call to help, get those things going. Well, as we expanded that out, we also realized that our codes enforcement people, a lot of those are the same customers. They're the ones that haven't mowed their grass for 2.5 years, or they've got hoarding issues, or trash is piling up. Well, now we've brought codes enforcement into that team as well. So we're kind of approaching it from multiple dimensions, trying to solve problems rather than just recycle problems. Here, coming up this Monday, we have a city council meeting where North Kansas City Hospital heard about the efforts and the success we'd had just in this short year. They approached us about putting one of their mental health workers up here as well a few days a week to work as part of that team, because they're seeing the same clients we are. Where they're getting transported to the ER. The ER is already backed up from every other problem that they're dealing with, and then the patients are walking away. We're dealing with them the next day. We're bringing them back down. It's this big recycling. That doesn't work. So we're trying to take a more proactive approach with these partnerships to say, okay, let's, instead of just kicking this ball around the the playground, let's actually try to solve some problems. And we've had great success with it. Our kind of repeat callers, those repeat offenders, repeat clients and patients, those numbers have dropped significantly just in the short time we've had just this one clinician.
Wow. And how long's that been?
I think we started that in March or May of last year.
So you are seeing a decrease.
We saw a decrease within the first month.
Wow.
Because our officers do what are called CIT reports. And anytime they encounter anything that has any kind of a mental health nexus, they're doing a quick report on it. Well, those clinicians and our coordinating officer, they go through those every Monday. And they start making phone calls, and they compare the reports, and then they reach out and they try to provide those resources to the individuals. And a lot of them are very receptive to it. A lot of them didn't realize that these resources were out there. And now we get people into the system, and we've got now them maybe on the proper medications or in the proper counseling, and now they're not calling us every 15 minutes to talk about things that we can't do anything about. Law enforcement's in a very gray area when it comes to this stuff. Most of the time we respond on these, there is no criminal nexus. We're there because we're kind of the last people to call because nobody else knows what to do.
Yeah.
And it puts us in a tricky situation because sometimes those do result in uses of force. And we don't want to be in those. We don't want them to be in jail, or we don't want them to be in our custody. We want those individuals to be in the care that they need to be in, and we've got to find a better way to do that.
But the answer is not, and I go back to 2020 and some of the just horrific ideas that came out of 2020. The answer is not to get rid of cops and just hire therapists to go on calls. That is not the answer.
I think that's a really bad idea.
Okay.
We're having trouble finding cops to go on these calls. I can't imagine that there's going to be a line of therapists wanting to go handle them.
Yes. So this seems like the great way to admit and understand that the mental health crisis is real and people need help separate from just being arrested. Absolutely. But there's got to be a process here, which is what you guys are doing.
Absolutely. And, jails aren't always the best place to put people. We need to get them the help they need, but it can't always just be a police problem. We've got to get the right people involved in these issues and these calls at the times that they're happening, not a week later, a month later. And by having these embedded clinicians with us, it just makes it that much more efficient.
Fred Ferris, the Gladstone Police Chief, is on KCMO. We've got 15 minutes left on the show, and as our conversation comes to an end, I appreciate you having us. I appreciate all that your department has done to welcome us here, and I know that there's people involved that haven't come on the show that you want to thank as well.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for this Back the Blue tour. We talked a little bit off air about that silent majority that's out there. We know we have the support, and I'm fortunate, and my officers are fortunate to be in a community like Gladstone. We have an incredible city council that loves its police department. They've made huge investments in this beautiful new police building that's going up right next door here. We have a great mayor and council that have always been there for us. That takes so much off of my shoulders when I don't have to worry about those kind of outside influences that are, kind of always knocking at the door. The community loves our police department, and that just makes it so much easier for us to go out there and do the work that they want us to do.
And shout out to your city manager, Bob
Bear.
Right? He told me this morning at 5:30 a.m. he listens to me in the shower every morning. I said, he says that I join him in the shower every morning. I said, geez, wish my wife said that.
That might need to be a T-shirt.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys being up here. Thanks for reaching out to us, and I hope you come back and see us when this new building's done. That would be great. Fred Ferris, the Gladstone Police Chief on KCMO Talk Radio.